Hello all and welcome to another edition of the Tongue Tie Off podcast on pacesetters.au network. Jace, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm in my quarter Maori native uniform again.
Guns
well
out,
known
look at
for
that.
wearing blazers everywhere. And I still like to wear a blazer, but I tell you what, even though it's freezing cold, I like my little my quarter Maori native uniform of just the tank top and the shorts. So I'm looking forward to this. You're confident about the meeting when we get to the preview for Melton, and I reckon I'll find out how confident I am once we start talking about it, because I thought I was pretty confident. Then you asked me, and I've started to sort of waver. But when we start conflabbing, I reckon I might get more confident again, Caves.
I'm a bit nervous. I sometimes look at it and think I'm too confident, Jace. And then I talk to you, we miss a line on a couple, and my confidence just is dented a bit. But it probably comes down to a more safe level, because sometimes when I get too confident, I find that it's just rubbish. I'm miles off the mark.
I know when I'm too confident, I know I'm going to lose. Like it's the old saying, isn't it? I mean, it's too good to be true. I see the difference this week to last week, and I made a blue, and we'll do a review of last week in a moment. But I made a blue. I was going to have less on the game plan because I didn't really love the meeting. But they're decisions you make when you're punting, aren't they?
Mm.
So whether it's the game plan or whether you're punting, I had a little bit too much on, and there's been a little bit of a theme. The last race, or the last couple of races at Melton, have thrown up the surprises, and we were the beneficiaries. Oh, a couple of the last legs of the quaddie, at least, when Final Collect and
Ikigai.
Not Ikigai, but
No, not Ikigai.
When we got the big quaddie, I think there was some value in the last two legs. Was it you,
Yep.
Beauty? Might have been you. Anyway, so you can be the beneficiary if you've staggered the quads and all the rest of it, but I'm wary of those last couple of races at least. But we'll get stuck into that in a moment, mate.
We shall. The first part of the program, of course, Jace, is where we sort of we call it the intro in our show planning.
It's getting a bit of traction, the intro.
It is, and we had a great discussion last week around ownership marketing and ownership in the great game of harness racing. And did you get any feedback, Jace? Any chatter that you picked up on following that?
Oh yeah, some DMs, and there was good chatter on Elon Musk's platform as well, wasn't there? So I think what we're going to do, this might be a little bit of a sidestep this week, but we're going to talk about the big issues. And clearly, everyone who is invested in the game is invested in those issues. So, I mean, I was actually surprised at how positive the feedback was and how people felt that we raised some good points, because between you and I always think when we're chatting even for an hour that we're only scratching the surface. But I think that's what we've got to do. We'll come back to that debate down the track, won't we? And try and sort of, as my daughter Bella says, you've got to stare, because that's where you find the detail. She scared me a bit when she said that, but you've got to.
It's very smart. It's a very good approach.
Yeah,
Bella.
but I was worried she was a bit evil. She's not killing animals, that's amazing. But we have to go into the detail as well, because it's all well and good to make the broad statements, isn't it? But we want to come up with the solutions and say, well, I reckon if you initiate that, that might be the key. But it was great feedback. I know we were talking about things that I think everybody knows, but sometimes I wonder whether everybody does know these things, Kate.
Well, I mean, there's such a thing as back to basics sometimes, though, isn't there? Things can seem obvious. You can take things off in a million different directions over the years and end up in a place where you're so far off where you thought you might go, and you think, okay, hang on, do we just strip it back? Because I think a lot of what we spoke about last week were just getting those basics right. And we've got it's a new lineup in at head office at the moment, and there's no harm in just sort of stripping it back a bit, focusing on those, getting those basics, spot on, like the ownership marketing, Jace, the space on the website. Some of the owner perks that we talked about. Experiences, the owner experience, 100%. And I want to be really clear. What we're talking about is not what I certainly wasn't suggesting we go and spend big dollars on this sort of stuff, because at the moment, the dollars may not be there to spend, right?
No.
However, you do have a certain amount of budget, which is the cost of just doing business. And my point is that there should be a decent chunk of that towards things that are going to actually make a difference in turning things around.
It's reapportioning a little bit. That's all. So ownership, in my opinion, we'll get on to the next topic, because what you just said was quite a good segue into something we'll talk about soon in terms of getting back to basics. Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. But it's under the marketing umbrella, surely.
Well, it has to be. It has to be because you're delivering an experience, and racing is an emotional experience. It's fun, so that should be marketing. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, Jace. We all do, and I tell you where we really can get emotional sometimes, Jason. That's when we cop a bad beat. So there's a segue for you. We threw out on the Elon Musk platform, formerly known as Twitter, during the week. We asked for what have been some of your horror stories, Jace, where I'm not talking about you went out and you spent too much money. I mean, that's just you've got control over that. You've made a bad decision. I'm talking about when have you really felt you're onto something and it just hasn't quite worked out. And Sharpie was pretty quick to reply to the tweet with bring out the little violins for the Vincent story. So he must be a bit sick of my tale.
Well, you've got your Vincent story. I've got my Maxi Man tale that you like to bring up on virtually every episode of Tongue Tie Off and every day virtually. But I'll be honest with you, I find it hard because I started punting so early. I think I've accumulated 4, 5, 6,000 ways to get beaten. To be honest, if I'm in a retail venue, not many people go these days, but you're there and someone's blowing up, or whenever you're in an environment with fellow punters and they're blowing up, you just feel like going, I don't take it to heart too much. Like, it hurts for a moment, but I feel I haven't seen it all, but I've been involved in 99.8% of the ways that you can get beaten. You think about harness racing where you can gallop and then make up 90 meters and get beaten ahead. You can not turn left in the sprint lane and then find out the horse doesn't like going. There's a million ways to.
You could be disqualified for ducking into the horse might have ducked into the sprint lane, straightened up, still won, but then got tossed out. That's a way to lose. I don't think I've lost one like that, but that would hurt.
I'll tell you one that is your own fault. That I reckon maybe 10 to 12 times in my life, you've put the wrong numbers.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yep. And in this day and age, it was different with the ticket back in the day, but in this day and age, when you are refreshing, when you're refreshing, and that money's not coming in, and you're seeing all paying, and that your heart, all chambers.
Now that has happened. Yep, that has happened.
And with my staggered quaddies, it's
well, okay.
The pump anyway.
Well, I won't tell my Vincent one again because I've told it before many times. What's this? Is it ad? What's the Latin phrase?
Ad infinitum.
Ad infinitum. That's it. Thanks, Bob. I was putting
caveat emptor, buyer beware.
There you go. It was in my earlier days at HRV, and I was just getting through these staggered quads that you taught me, and I thought, all right, J Bond does them. It makes a lot of sense. So I've been a convert, as you know, from a fair way out. And I was going through them, and I really liked this one particular horse, and I had it singled out, right? And so I started staggering all my quads. And as I got there, I thought, no, I haven't done that right. I'll scratch that one out, got back. In the end, right, I put all my quads on, made all the outlays, and then it's like you move a bit of paper. I lifted up the bit of paper, and the horse that I'd singled out, I forgot to put in any of them. Now, the race had started, and Jason had won, and it paid $12, and I wanted to single it out. And at that point, you are just so fuming with yourself, and you're so.
Did you get the other legs?
Did
you turn away and hide under the desk and just say, I
did. I walked away from the night. I was fuming, and I knew I couldn't make any good decisions after that. It's funny, Jace. I don't know if I ended up getting that quad, and I suspect the fact I don't remember it means I didn't, which is I'm thankful for. But it still hurts when that 12-1 shot wins, and you just think that you will get all the other legs.
Can I ask you this? And even though we're not employed to do this, gamble responsibly, people.
Of course.
If you'd had 5 extra minutes, and it's amazing why we do this as punters, why we wait to put those bets on until it's 8 seconds until the mobile rolls. Why we do it. It's the same reason why I like an even amount in my account, 300, and you bet accordingly. I think a lot of people do that. If you'd had 5 extra minutes, knowing what you'd already expended, would you have thrown good money after bad, so to speak, and and made sure you had it, or would you just want it?
No, I would have, but I would have very quickly thrown. I've done this before. If I've forgotten to put one in a trifecta, I'll just quickly go and lob it in an exacta or something, one out with the others, because I don't have time to go and do everything again.
Yeah, okay.
And just put a bit more on, and who knows, one of your incorrect bets might win. That's one of the.
Do you want to hear an unpopular philosophy?
Yeah. Always.
Nearly 1-to-1 ratio.
Yeah.
And punters don't get this. Every bad beat you get the race wrong, and you win.
Every bad beat you get.
So you get a bad beat. So you say, oh, this thing should have won. It was immoral. If it had got out in time, if this hadn't happened. But no one ever looks, pardon me, I'm not saying this to, but the hatchback.
Yes, you are. I knew you'd say that. Yeah.
No, but I'm saying nobody looks at that and goes, I'll tell you what, a couple of breaks went my way. They only remember the bad beats.
Of course. But again, in my hatchback defense, that's punting, isn't it? Because I'd made the point that
yes,
have a small each way, okay? Have something small more the place. And knowing that it would land in the right position, it still needs things to go right to win. It was never going to come out and dominate. And not many 40-to-1 pops do they?
No, I wish I thought of another example. I apologise. It was a great tip. It was going to run a place regardless. Maybe it was going to win. But I'm saying that is punting. And
it is.
You get lucky, don't you?
Of course you do.
Something happens that you hadn't planned in your map. You end up behind the leader instead of 3 poles. You end up leading because something else gallops. And no one ever looks at it and goes to their mates, tell you what, I just got a good beat. Oh, I got a good beat.
I got lucky there.
I got lucky.
Skill.
That wasn't me. That was just a little bit of happenstance and fortune. But you remember the bad beats. So I think it would do all punters a service. 2 things: to remember the good beats, and also, if you are holding on to a bad beat, do not have another bet until you have released it.
It's called tilt, isn't it, in poker?
Yes. So do a bit of Zen meditation like Phil Jackson, and let it go before you have it. Let it go like Frozen.
That's it. I do want a great song. I do want to read out a couple from the audience before I do. Super quick one. I do always remember my old man used to, my late old man, he used to go down to put mum's bets on. She'd always put the quaddie on. And there was this story she used to tell. You're at the races one day. She made a change to her quaddie. She said, hang on, John, come back here. He's already there. He heard her and he turned around and she said, change that last leg to this. And he did that. And she lost in the last leg. And had she have stuck to her original, it would have won her about 10 grand back in the day. And she never let him live it down. She says, the only time you've ever bloody listened to me and you heard me.
Well, I tell you what, you've given one. I've told the story before, but when I was young, the old man, they call it child abuse now, used to give us, my late brother and I, my late old man, used to give us $100 each in the phone account.
Yep.
And it was back in the day when they didn't record the bets. And we put the right bet on and won $400 or something.
Yep.
And it didn't go on. And I've got no temper now. I've got great equanimity, but I had a vicious temper when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And my old man just loved it. He goes, "You're a man after my own heart. Let's get after him." We never got the money though.
Okay. No, there's some great stories and some tough stories. And Mum, who I know is a big watcher of the show, hopefully I got that story right. If it wasn't 10,000, it was 1,000. It was good money back in the day, Jay. So I know that much. Stephen Hunt, Sooty, our good friend, who actually is part of my Vincent story. He gave me the tip at $11 all those weeks out. He says, my $10 straight quaddie, which included 2 30-to-1 pops, gets up, pays over, this was horrible, pays over $8,000 for a unit super tab, 3,500 New South Wales, and I got $189 on Queensland.
Well, back in the day, Victoria always used to pay the least, I reckon, but like way back in the day. But
yeah. Yes, no, that's it. Steve Cleve, last Saturday night, I had the quaddie. First leg 3, trifecta the leg, second leg, trifecta the leg, third leg, 5, trifecta, okay. And he got the $29 winner. Fourth leg, he had the top 3 in betting. $5,500 was his worst result, and $11,000 plus the best result. Right. He got blown out by a 30-to-1 pop, ran second, quad pace 38 grand. Bad beat for the Cleve.
I lay off.
We've talked about that, and there were a few dudes said so on Twitter. He did say he'd spent his allocation at that point, to which Tim O'Connor replied, phone a friend at that point.
Well, if Toc's going to say phone a friend, hey, Toc, you're the friend.
There you go. Exactly.
Last one before we get onto our little intro subject, talking about that. The bad beats aren't quite the same now, because if you can beat the odds makers, we can talk about this another time, but you can still find a way to win, can't you? If you can. If you back one at $8 and it starts at $4, we can go into it another time, but you don't, not like back in the day, you don't have to, you don't have to suck a lemon, do you?
No, you don't. One more from the Twitter. I have to mention this one because I love the horse. Darren Clayton, the dash man. I was in Adelaide. Adelaide for Inter 97. I was on Rainbow Night. Remember Rainbow Night, James?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Pre-post. Then 33-1 average on final night. Still believe he got there. Have never seen a developed print. So Dashman's not letting that one go. Was Rainbow Night, who had that? Was it Justice? Lisa Justice?
I don't know, but do you remember the Crampton Cup? Was it overturned in court or something?
Was that the night where your whole broadcast became? It was just the most interesting random broadcast of you guys sitting because the rain started or something.
That was before I wasn't broadcasting. It was a Tony Peacock horse, Okoka something.
Oh, I don't remember this one. No.
Strike, who might have won a Victoria Cup for Crandell Getty. Yeah, but we can go. I'll have to look up that story, but I do remember. I think it was a dead heat or something, and it was legal action. So Darren Clayton, don't give up. It's a cold.
Don't give up. Yep. It is. So there's plenty more. Check out Pace Setters AU on X, and you can join that thread. Tell us your bad beats, and we'll keep sharing them. We like to share whatever comes our way on the X platform. Tell your friends too. Jay Bond, there was some big news today before we get on to some breezing with Bond for the listeners of your former show, a bit of old-fashioned breezing with Bond. There was a huge announcement out of New South Wales. I think it was today, and it's basically for $1 million bonus to their Carnival of Cups. So when the new Carnival of Cups rolls around, Jason, $1 million up for grabs if a horse can win all five legs of the carnival. $1 million to the connections. Now, if you only win 4 of 5, you've had a great carnival still, of course. You win 500,000.
Sure.
And if you win 3 of the 5, which, you know, because 5 out of 5 is pretty tough. 4 out of 5 is also really, really tough.
Nothing for 3, though.
3 out of 5 is tough but doable. $250,000 in cash if you can do that. Now, that's on top of your 60 grand per race for each of those races, Jace. What do you think of that? I wanted to ask you, what do you think of it as a marketing tactic, right? A. B, they've also got the living end, Daryl Braithwaite, and someone else. Who did I say earlier? There was someone else.
Does that thing still exist? The race day attraction?
Daryl Braithwaite.
That's the way it's gonna be. The race day attraction fund or whatever. The rap.
I don't know. It's a great question. I don't know if that still exists.
My number one question is, where did Shannon Knoll?
Thanks, George.
Well, Shannon Knoll. My number one question is, where did the money come from?
Yep.
Where did the money come from? Number one. Number two, I love the idea. I think $1 million, 500, 250 is overkill. But
it's life-changing, though. It's and that's pretty special.
I want everyone to have money. I'm not a miser. I'm not Ebenezer Scrooge. If the money's there, absolutely. Yep. But if somebody gave me $1 million and said, apportion it as you will for your respective state in harness racing, I don't know if I'd do it that way. But I do know with these race day attraction programs and trying to build tourism in regional venues and building up the cups, maybe that's where they'll give you the money and they won't give it somewhere else. Right? It's a fantastic idea. The more money, the better. I'd love to know where the money came from, number one. Number two, I would like to know the possibility. I'm assuming there's every chance that a particular horse can compete in all 5 events. If not, it's a little bit of a route. But if they can, it's absolutely phenomenal. It seems like a hell of a lot of money. Like I say, I'd spread it around a little bit more if I just had the million over there and could do what I wanted with it. But it's
one of the
terrific.
great arguments, though, isn't it? If you spread it around, it becomes a bit thin. Now it's $1 million. Of course, you can spread around and still make a good go of it.
You would still attract those horses with if it was $200,000, 150.
Yeah,
I think you would still get them all to compete in those races, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you wouldn't get the headline act out of it. You wouldn't get the headline out of it. Would you get all the same? Actually, there's other options around that time of year.
I reckon you would, and obviously you're going to get the regional press that you're after anyway, aren't you?
Well, of course you will. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I don't begrudge more money, that's for sure.
J-Bon, I like the idea though you talked to Rob Orb was a good one for this. He said back in the day you'd win a Group 1 and you could buy yourself a house and a car and set yourself up.
Yeah.
It's not quite the same these days because the cost of living, of course, has changed. So I do love the idea of, something being a bonus or a big prize money around that can actually change lives.
I love the dream. And I'll tell you one other thing that I love. I love it's for older horses.
Yes, that's a great point, which you did get some good feedback. I think you got was it an Alleluia or an Amen or a mixture of both from Ellie Hurley, who said you could testify, might have even been said. You are absolutely spot on, J-Bon.
Yeah.
So Ellie Hurley, I don't have the tweet in front of me, but she was 100% in your corner.
Keep your horses in work and you can still have a dream where you don't have to win a big juvenile or Classic H race.
Before we do the breezing with Bon, I was down at Tasmania for the Falls Festival one year. And we're at the bus, on the bus at the airport with all the other revelers. Marty and I are a bit older than all the revelers because, we are. Speaking of a bit older, there's this bloke and he's walking around. He's just unpacking his car. I looked down and I said to Marnes, that's Daryl Braithwaite. Look, because he was playing at the Falls Festival, right? And Daryl Braithwaite's there. And all the people on the bus, I thought they'd all turn and get around him. Not one person turned. Most of them had never even heard of him, Jace.
Well, I'm usually pretty good with the age game. I'm going to say Daryl Braithwaite would be 73 years old.
Yeah, I reckon you'd be about right. I'll say 75. I want to go a bit older.
Oh, you pigged at me there a bit.
What is he? No.
75.
Oh, bang. There you go. I had a feeling he was slightly older. Mate, breezing with Bon, let's do it. I know you've got a few things you wanted. Is it right to say, can I say get off your chest, or do you just want to, you're not in that sort of mood? What are you?
No.
Where's the bond meter? Where's the bond meter at?
The bond meter's at, it was, it's always at 10 with everything to do with harness racing, right? But it's probably, I wrote an article a while back. I think I spoke about it earlier doors. I considered whether to post it. I'm going to make a couple of little alterations, but keep the meat of it there. And it's more broad than yours. Your great article about ownership, one specific subject. Basically, and you discussed a little bit earlier, back to basics. The biggest personal frustration I had in my time in harness racing Victoria was changing administrations and the lack of IP being handed down, or if it was handed down, not being acknowledged, understood, seeing what's worked, what hasn't worked. And it felt like I don't know what it felt like to you sometimes, but a lot of the time it felt like Groundhog Day to me. Someone would come with an idea and it was like, I think I heard that in 1984. Yep. I was watching the Los Angeles Olympics and Carl Lewis, terrific performance. I heard that then. And then something else will come up and you're like, and also you spoke about ownership, the flitting around of different priorities. Like 1 minute it would be ownership, then it would be wagering, then it would be breeding, then it would be events. And you're like, you can actually do all of these things in conjunction. We spoke about the circle. They're all connected and you don't have to prioritize one over the other. But I would love, to be honest, it will never happen, but I would love to have John Anderson, Grant Dunshay, Vaughan Lynch, Shane Glowry, Marto can come if he wants, Dale Brown, everybody that's been involved, Steve, whoever you want, any executive there, to all be able to sit around with the current executive and talk about, strategic plans, what's worked, what hasn't, because it just feels like we take one step forward and two steps back, because you go back to something and you go, that was tried and it sort of half works. And the other point of the breezing with Bond is I feel like we've been in a position for quite some time to make big, sweeping, not expensive, China, not expensive. You don't have to break the bank, but huge, innovative changes, because it feels like all the way through, people try and just move the pawn one way or chuck their rook over here. And you're like, that is not going to do anything special. And the fear has always seemed to be, well, there's been a couple. One, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to have a big initiative that doesn't work. Well, some aren't going to work. That's why you have a number of them. And number two, I will get blowback from the industry. I'll tell you right now, the industry's not giggling at home right now and drinking $400 bottles of wine and eating at Flower Drum. I think the majority would welcome big innovative changes, don't you?
100% I do. I think they'd be screaming out for that. I kept making the point last week. You can have tough times and you can have limited budgets, but you can't sit on your hands, of course. You've still got to keep pushing forward. So absolutely, find your areas of where you're going to have the biggest impact, right? And chase them and do it responsibly and fiscally responsibly, right? I love your idea before about getting those former managers, execs, administrators in the room. Imagine the experience that all of those people can bring to a discussion, right? There's no harm in having good open conversations like that.
Most of those people, particularly the ones I mentioned earlier, when I first turned up, they love harness racing.
Of course they do.
And they've got no vested interest. They would want to just share those ideas.
Well, of course they would. And I wonder if sometimes there's in any business, there's a that's the past. We press forward, and I don't want to hear those things. And I'm certainly not suggesting that's the case now, by the way. This is just what you see out there in business, isn't it? And there's this.
People do want to stand theory primata and do
exactly. But I always think the new modern style of leadership in any industry, in any space in 2024 is actually about having more discussions that once upon a time probably weren't had, and with connections and people that weren't had. You can't lose anything by having those discussions. And hey, who knows? Maybe those discussions are being had with those people. I don't know. Yeah. But it's a great idea. Just, hey, this is why we went in this direction and it didn't work, but we had a crack and it didn't work. Or this is why we went in that direction and it worked really well, which is why we've got this now. Just being able to get a bit more IP. That'd be amazing.
Well, I'm going to go to the extreme now, okay?
Right, yep.
These innovations can be anything, but Anthony Butt was somebody who always had a million ideas. I don't know whether he'd be happy. I'm sure he's fine. He shared. The thing is, when I came to Harness Racing Victoria, I thought I knew a bit. I didn't know shit. All I knew was I love the sport and I love sport in general, and I didn't understand why everybody didn't love it, and I thought we could make a difference there. I felt that harness racing was too state-centric, and I still do. Admittedly, we're talking about Victoria all the time. There's a Queensland Carnival going on. Maybe next week we'll talk about Queensland. But I always felt like we just ignored the Miracle Mile, and different states ignored. It's a sport in general, right? And number three, I felt like we followed the thoroughbreds too much when I was certain we had competitive advantages that they didn't have. And instead of following behind the behemoths, you should try and cut the angles. Bit of Mark Woodford, just sort of slice it around.
Woodies, yep.
But some crazy ideas. Anthony Butt used to talk about like an idea of races where there was a certain amount of money if you were first to after 400 meters, just to inspire a little bit of excitement in races. We had some crazy discussions with Martin Risley and others about how you could work out standing starts better, and even have mobiles and drones that created standing starts that were more sort of.
Yep.
I'm going way out there intergalactic, I know, but even a couple of my ideas that are a little bit avant-garde. One of them I used to speak about, and Alan Tubbs was the one who spoke to me about this. Harness Racing Victoria going out and purchasing mares and having a subsidiary organisation breed horses to ensure that we have a good horse population.
Yeah.
If we don't have a horse population, we don't have races. And if we don't have races, well, it's all over. Or even, and we've spoken about this, and I know this will get some, if I don't explain it right, it will get people a little bit edgy. But the inner and outer circle, I believe in a picnic racing circuit. I think $4,500 is nowhere near enough money.
Yeah.
For a real race.
They race for $3,000 over in South Australia, I think sometimes. Yeah. I agree. I believe in a picnic circuit too. For this reason, Jace, I would love to one day train or drive a winner, but I'm not going to do that in a professional setting, I don't think. But as a hobbyist, I'd love to one day try my hand at it and have a crack. But I'd expect to be in the picnics, if that makes sense.
But the whole point of it is you keep hobbyists in the sport.
Of course you do.
Right now they're saying, well, there's not enough money. Well, I'll tell you what. If you had to turn up, if you or I had to turn up and run against Usain Bolt, I don't know who the big dog is anymore, it's half power Justin Gatlin, you're never going to win.
No.
So it doesn't matter whether it's $4,500 or $25 million, right? Yeah. If you've got a circuit that is for less money, then you could add more onto the base prize money over there. Then you can have Birchip style meetings. And I'll tell you what, people say they've got to be non-tab. The greyhounds race for a few $100 in some races. And the second biggest turnover track in Victoria is
Mighty Mildura. Yeah.
And that's not the highest quality horse flesh in the state. But you know what? Everybody knows that everybody's racing for sheep stations. And in these races, they would.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to make them non-tab. You could actually make a significant profit out of them because of the prize money you're paying out.
Well, and the other great thing about
on like to like.
Yeah, and the other great thing about Mildura is it's the same pool of horses, give or take a few every meeting, which is the Hong Kong thoroughbred model, which means you can go into it with great confidence. You know the horse population, you know the trainers and drivers, and you are kind of protected, aren't you, Jace, from some of those really major metro stables who outside of cup time, they're just not going to go up to Mildura.
Yeah.
And so it's a good point because you've kind of got that circle up there and it works.
Yeah. The trainers cannot have won more than a certain amount of races than drivers. Yep. So, and the drivers actually get an education that way as well before they progress rather than being pitted against the best. And I'll tell you one little subsidiary benefit of it all.
Yeah.
And I speak about this all the time to a lot of people. I know Jimmy Herbertson, the Love Bug, or Mickey Bellman Ding Dong, or all of them want to take they're going to say yes to every drive. But lower their workload. They might not lower their workload a little bit because, and I'm going to say it as bluntly as I can, it shocks the shit out of me that more people haven't died on the roads. Because they are, sometimes you look at the meetings that they have to get to and you're just thinking, how is it possible? And I know they carpool and all the rest, but just take a little bit of the edge off it and say, well, there's 3-4 meetings a week you can't compete at.
Yeah,
so I think that's
a
subsidiary benefit.
I think if we had driver managers like we have jockey managers, it'd be just that. It'd be like, I'll get you 6 drives on that program instead of 3, okay, and I'll get you 6 drives there instead of 4, but you're having the next day off now because you picked up more drives there and you can have that day off. And I've often thought that would be in an ideal world, but maybe it's we don't have the structure for that at the moment. But it's a good discussion, Jace. Is there any more? I'm mindful of the clock. Is there any more you want to get off your chest or throw on the agenda this week? Or
no, look, I think that's one thing that's been on my mind. We won't labour the point on this, but obviously some poor communication from maybe inside HRV during the week as well with the cancelled meeting.
But I wasn't across that. I did see that there was a meeting called off,
and it was very late. But I mean, those communication breakdowns can happen. But I did back in the day because you're trying to keep meetings on. Sometimes it was held over until far too late. I just think respect for the participants is crucial because they are putting
paramount.
They're putting on the show. So, no, I don't need to go any further with it right now. I'll have the article and we can discuss it further like we will with all these things down.
Sounds good. And we're not wrapping up this intro just yet, of course, because, J-Bon, the final part of this is it's time to look back. And we used to have a show, Michael Howard and I had a little show called Looking Back, which only lasted about 3 episodes, but he created one of the great little Slim Dusty video clips of all time
as an intro,
which we never used.
The Country Cups?
He might be, actually, as we just said, Jordan let us know there in the background, the voice in the sky. It was Shannon Knoll. I'm trying to think of someone else who's would be a bit of a joke, some one-hit wonder, but that's just getting cruel, isn't it? To those that are actually there, they're very good musicians. The Living End are brilliant, Jace. I like the Living End.
They're actually one of the best live bands going around. Live, yeah.
Yep. Last week, did you find? Let's reverse it. Did you find a black booker before we do the votes?
Yes, and my black booker did win on Saturday night in La Belle Bijou. I'm going. It's funny.
Ka-ching. Paid well.
I didn't tip La Belle Bijou.
No,
I probably won't tip the Beach Fantasy this week, but the Beach Fantasy was my black booker.
I'll just quickly turn the page. Yes, it was in my honourable mentions.
How many of those were there?
I had 1, 2. I had 4, and 3 of them were from the Douglas stable.
Yeah, right.
The Serge Blanco was the one that wasn't. I thought Clear Left was held up too. That's Douglas, isn't it? I think.
Yep.
But I went with. Who did I go with? I went with Dolagiri.
You just love Dolagiri.
Well,
did you win big on Dolagiri at some point?
No, it's just fantasy was my tip, and Dolagiri blew me away. So I don't have any great love for it. But I'll say this. Last week, you watched this horse's run, Jace. It was pulling early in the piece, and then it was absolutely bolting, turning for home up the inside, and just never really given any room to work with until very late, when just sticks its head out beautifully and really found the line savagely and strikes a race that I really like this weekend.
Dolagiri for me. One of the 3-2-1s. It is funny that you mentioned you got blown out by Dolagiri, because Intergaze, we were having a bit of banter with these horses. Intergaze is my favourite thoroughbred of all time. And you know how my love affair started?
Rod Craig's horse? I don't know.
And Craig Carmody was the jockey.
That's it.
Craig's going on there.
Was it Rod Craig? Was it Rod Craig, or am I getting mixed up with Craig Carmody? Okay.
No, it was Rod Craig, the trainer, and Craig Carmody was the...
Yep.
Craig's List. Octagonal was my favourite horse at the time.
The BO, yep.
And it was either Ocky's penultimate start or final start. I think he got beaten by Arcadia maybe at one. But Intergaze beat him.
Arcadia was a nice horse,
and then the torch was passed, and Intergaze became my favourite horse. But anyway.
And in that exact era, Easter Dad, my boy, was always going. There were some great horses. Was Peep on the Sly that era, or just before?
No, about then. Did he win in Newmarket?
Might have. I think Ralph Jury trained that. I think. It's ridiculous if that's true, and it's ridiculous what you remember.
Yeah.
My votes for last week, I gave 1 vote to Mark Hayes for Sir Patrick. It was great to see, as much as I didn't back it. I didn't have a bet in the race, so it didn't really bother me. But Mark Hayes, I don't think I did. Anyway, he's back in the winners list with Sir Patrick. Scott Rains deserves too, because the job he's done with Angus Indiana now for a while is worthy of a shout out.
A Rain Man.
2 votes.
Good night out with the Rain Man once.
The Rains Man. Hey, funny, Kyle Marshall's given us a nickname too. Remember, we weren't sure what to call him, and he jumped on Twitter, and I said, "Well, what are we calling you?" And I think he said the Martianator. So there you go.
Leave the nicknames with us, Kyle. I think that's your best performance. Leave the nicknames with us.
That was after. I think it was that. I might have got it wrong. That was because the Scottinator, I think Scotty Ewan had 4 winners from 4 drives last week. He's on fire. 3 votes.
All right, the Codenator. What do you got for 3 votes?
Michael Stanley deserves the 3. Stable, absolutely flying. Got the double. His strike rate at the moment's phenomenal. And tonight, he's won with one of the Tiger Pie horses. It's not Blue Collar because, of course, that horse is retired.
Yes, long retired.
Which Tiger Pie was it tonight? It was the one that's an emergency at the weekend, Jace.
Not You Betcha.
No.
Surf's Up.
Yes, Surf's Up Tiger Pie won tonight. And paid, I was amazed to see it pay $5.50, given that.
That means
yes, I did. And so shout out there to Mick Stanley stable as well, because I was very happy with that as well.
From you.
So 3 votes to Mick Stanley.
All right,
your votes?
We can wind up the segment. Now that I think about it, I'm surprised it hasn't happened previously. It's exactly bang on, dead on, smack on the same.
3, 2, and 1, all the same.
In order.
That is incredible, given we've both sort of gone, Scott Rains wouldn't have gotten too many votes previously, and nor would Mark Hayes, but that's just aligned beautifully, J-Bon.
We could have. I was considering flicking them around for the 1 and 2, but ultimately we have aligned perfectly, and hopefully, Coates, it's a precursor to how we see this meeting. Although if you're tipping Dollar Gary, a bit worried anyway.